painted quietly in the background, his eyes never straying far from her. At night, when the lights dimmed and the crowds were gone, they danced slowly in the empty gallery, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with soft jazz. "Every dream I had was lonely until it had your name in it," Juan murmured once, pulling her close. "Then let's keep dreaming," she whispered back. Their love became a blend of passion and peace, of work and wonder. A love not meant to be perfect, but true. And every evening, as they closed the doors of the Harmony house, they'd look at each other and smile, knowing that the life they'd built was art itself. Back in Seoul, life for Noble and Juan was a quiet masterpiece. Their world revolved around art, laughter, and the kind of love that didn't demand attention. It simply existed, soft and steady like a heartbeat. Every morning began the same way. Juan would wake before her, draw the curtains, and let the golden light kiss her face. Then he'd stand for a moment, just watching her breathe, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. "You look like peace itself," he whispered once. She stirred, smiling without opening her eyes. "Then don't wake peace too early, my love," he chuckled, lying back beside her. "Just making sure I'm not dreaming again." And sometimes, when she finally opened her eyes, he'd already had breakfast ready. Pancakes in the shape of hearts, or sweet rice porridge with strawberries she loved. The city outside was fast and busy, but inside their penthouse, time slowed down. Their evenings were often spent on the balcony overlooking Seoul's skyline. The city lights twinkled like scattered stars, and Noble would rest her head on his shoulder as they shared a blanket and a cup of tea. "Do you ever think we'll stop feeling like this?" she asked one night. "Like what?" he smiled. "Like every moment is the first time." Juan looked at her, his gaze tender and certain. "No, because love doesn't get old when it's real. It just grows deeper, like paint layers you can't separate." She smiled, cupping his face. "You always turn everything into art." "Only because you made my life one," he murmured, kissing her softly. Some nights, they'd playfully cook together, flour on her cheeks, laughter echoing through the kitchen. She'd hum African love songs while stirring soup, and he'd come up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, swaying to her rhythm. "You're going to make me burn the rice," she laughed. "Then we'll eat it anyway," he whispered against her ear, voice low and teasing. "Why?" "Because it's made by you." She turned, laughing, but he caught her lips mid-laughter, and suddenly the world grew quiet, save for the gentle simmer of their love. Sundays were their favorite, no work, no press, no cameras. Just them. They'd walk through the Han River Park, fingers entwined, sometimes renting a small boat just to drift and talk about nothing and everything. Noble would close her eyes and lean into the wind. "If I could freeze one moment forever," she'd whisper, "it would be this." "Then don't freeze it," Juan said softly. "Let's just keep living it again and again." Late at night, when the world slept and Seoul's lights faded to a dim glow, Juan often found himself painting her again. The curve of her smile, the warmth in her eyes, the serenity she brought to his world. She'd wake up and find him there, paint on his hands and love in his gaze. "You never stop, do you?" she teased. "I can't," he replied simply, "because every time I look at you, I find something new to fall in love with." Then she'd walk to him, drape her arms around his neck, and whisper, "Then promise me we'll never run out of things to fall in love with." "Never," he said, sealing it with a kiss that felt like forever. In a city that never slept, Noble and Juan had built a world that did not rush. A love that moved gently, spoke softly, and lived loudly only in the quiet spaces between them. And every night, as they lay together under the Seoul moonlight, they whispered the same words before sleep. "You're my peace. You're my home." And indeed, they were two souls who had turned heartbreak into harmony and found eternity in the simple rhythm of everyday love. It was their weather. Whenever the rain fell, they stayed home, wrapped in warmth, the city hidden behind fogged glass. Their apartment glowed with candlelight and the scent of cinnamon tea, the soft hum of jazz filling the space between them. Noble stood by the window one afternoon, tracing tiny hearts on the glass as rain streaked down. Juan came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "You love watching the rain," he murmured. She smiled. "It reminds me of my childhood. We used to dance barefoot in it." He turned her gently to face him. "Then why not now?" Before she could reply, he took her hand and led her to the balcony. The rain fell harder now, but Juan didn't care. He stepped into it, pulling her along, laughing. "Juan, you're insane," she squealed, water soaking through her hair. "Only for you," he said, spinning her around. They danced under the downpour, barefoot and breathless, the city below fading into a blur of lights and sound. Her laughter echoed through the rain, and when he kissed her, wet hair, wet skin, all heart, it felt like the sky itself was blessing them. Later that night, they wrapped themselves in a blanket by the fireplace. Her head rested against his chest, their hands intertwined. "You know," she said softly, "you were supposed to be just another heartbreak in my story." Juan smiled faintly. "And now you're the reason I believe love can heal what it once broke." He lifted her hand, kissing it slowly. "Then let me keep proving it. Every day." Days turned into weeks, and their love deepened in the smallest details. Every morning, he'd leave her love notes on sticky pads, on the mirror, in her sketchbook, sometimes even on her mug. "You make soul brighter. The world feels right when you smile. I love you in every language I don't know yet." And she'd reply by sketching him little doodles, of them holding hands, of his sleepy morning hair, of her favorite moment from the night before. One Friday evening, after a long day at the Harmony House, Juan surprised her. The lights were dimmed when she walked in, the gallery silent, except for the faint sound of a piano playing somewhere. Then she saw it, the main hall transformed. Candles lined the walkway, and at the center stood Juan beside a grand piano, wearing his softest smile. "You did all this?" she asked, eyes wide. "For you," he said, "because today marks 1 year since the day I realized I loved you." She laughed, tears shimmering in her eyes. "That's not an anniversary, Juan. It is for my heart." He took her hand, guided her to the piano, and began to play. The melody was slow, romantic, one he'd written himself. When the last note faded, he looked up at her and whispered, "You're my favorite part of every day." She leaned in, kissed him softly, and whispered back, "And you're my reason to wake up and dream again." That night, as they walked home under the same soul rain, hand in hand, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them was filled with everything words could never say. And as the thunder rolled softly in the distance, Juan tightened his grip around her fingers and whispered, "As long as this city stands, I'll love you in it." Noble smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then we have forever," she whispered. It was the day Noble and Juan became one. The ceremony was held in the Harmony House, the very gallery they built together, their masterpiece of memories. Every wall was adorned with their story. His paintings of her, her sketches of him, and the art they'd inspired others to create. Noble stood behind the curtain, her heart trembling as the music began. Her wedding gown wasn't grand or heavy. It was simple, elegant, and soft, flowing like moonlight. A hint of gold thread shimmered through the white silk, a nod to her African heritage. Her friends helped place the delicate flower crown on her head. "You look like love itself," one whispered. She smiled softly. "That's because I'm marrying my peace." Juan waited at the altar, dressed in a cream suit that matched the light of the morning. But his eyes, they were the same ones that had watched her through storms and laughter, and now they glimmered with tears he didn't try to hide. When she appeared, walking slowly toward him, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Her every step was a verse, her smile the chorus of their love. He whispered under his breath, "She's my forever." When she reached him, he took her hands gently, and for a moment, they just stared. No words, only heart speaking. The officiant smiled. "Love brought you here not to end a story, but to begin one." Then came the vows. Noble's voice was soft, trembling with emotion. You once broke my heart without meaning to, but you also taught me that pain can bloom into something beautiful. You've been my calm after every storm, my laughter after tears, and my reminder that love is not perfection. It's patience. I promise to choose you, even on the days life feels heavy. Juan squeezed her hands, his voice low and full of devotion. You came into my world like sunlight after years of gray. I didn't know what love truly was until I saw it reflected in your eyes. I promise to protect your peace, to honor your dreams as my own, and to love you not just with my heart, but with my life. The officiant smiled, eyes glistening. Then, by the power of love itself, you may seal your vows. Juan lifted her face, and when their lips met, the room erupted in warmth and applause. The kiss wasn't just a beginning. It was the continuation of everything they had already built together. The reception was a celebration of two worlds. Korean drums blended with African rhythms, and the fusion of both cultures filled the air with life. Guests danced barefoot under strings of lights, laughter echoing through the garden. Noble and Juan moved among them, hand in hand, faces glowing. At one point, he pulled her close and whispered, "You see this? This is our symphony. And we composed it together." She smiled. Later that night, when the guests had gone and Soul's lights twinkled below, they stood alone on the balcony. Noble leaned against his chest, her dress brushing his legs softly. "We did it," she whispered. "No," he said gently, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We began it." The moon bathed them in silver light as the wind carried the scent of blossoms. Juan tilted her chin, his voice tender. "Noble Hyun," he said with a smile, tasting her name as though it were a promise. She smiled back, tears glistening. "I like how that sounds." And as they kissed once more under the soul sky, where their love had grown, healed, and bloomed, it felt like the city itself bowed to them forever. Their destination, Namhe Island, a place known for its calm seas and endless fields of gold canola flowers. Juan had chosen it himself. A retreat far from the noise of business and the cameras that once chased his name. "We started our story in Seoul," he told her as they drove along the coastal road. "But I want our forever to begin somewhere the world can't find us." Noble smiled, watching the sea glisten beside them. "Then let's get lost together." When they arrived, the island greeted them with ocean breeze and sunlight dancing over the waves. Their private villa stood on a quiet cliff, its glass walls opening to the horizon. The sound of the sea filled every corner, wrapping them in peace. That first evening, they walked barefoot along the beach, hand in hand, the sand cool beneath their feet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in pink and orange, and Noble leaned her head on Juan's shoulder. "Do you remember?" she said softly. "The first time we stood together under the rain in Seoul?" "I remember every drop," he murmured. "It was the moment I knew I couldn't let you go again." She smiled, brushing his hand with hers. "Then promise me we'll keep holding on, no matter how far life takes us." He stopped walking, turning to her. "I don't need to promise. I'll just live it." Then he kissed her, slow and unhurried, the waves crashing softly like applause in the distance. Their honeymoon days were slow and full of laughter. In the mornings, they'd cook breakfast together. She'd fry eggs while he made coffee, sneaking kisses between each step. Afterward, they'd explore the island, hiking through flower fields, riding bicycles by the sea, or simply sitting in silence, sketching the scenery side by side. Sometimes Juan would take photos of her. Sunlight in her hair, wind on her face, and every time she caught him, he'd grin and say, "I'm collecting proof that angels walk the earth." She'd laugh and chase him through the fields, her voice carried by the wind. One evening, as twilight wrapped the sky in purple hues, they sat on the veranda watching the ocean. Juan brought out a small wooden box and handed it to her. Inside was a tiny glass bottle sealed with a cork. Inside it, 2 paper hearts. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Our first love note," he said. "I wrote one heart, you write the other. Then we seal it and throw it to the sea." She laughed softly. So it can travel where we can't? Exactly. So even the ocean will know our love exists. Noble. Noble picked up a pen and wrote carefully, "For every wave, may our hearts rise together." They sealed it, walked down to the water, and threw the bottle far into the waves. It disappeared under the moonlight, carried away by destiny. Their love immortalized in motion. That night, they lay tangled in white sheets, the ocean whispering through the open windows. "You know," Juan said sleepily, tracing his fingers along her arm, "I used to think peace was silence, but now I know peace has your voice." Noble smiled, eyes half closed. "And I used to think love was just a dream, but now I wake up to it every day." He kissed her forehead, pulling her closer. "Then dream with me, forever." And with the moonlight spilling gently across their intertwined hands, they drifted into sleep, hearts steady, souls calm, the sound of the sea singing their forever. Yes, continue the story. When Noble and Juan returned to Seoul after their honeymoon, the city seemed different, softer, brighter, almost as if it, too, was celebrating their love. The skyline glittered under the same sky where they'd once walked as strangers, and now they returned as soulmates. Life gently found its rhythm again. Mornings with laughter, afternoons at the Harmony House, and quiet nights where love lingered like perfume in the air. One crisp spring morning, Juan stood in their kitchen wearing an apron, completely focused as he tried to flip pancakes. Noble appeared behind him, still in her silk robe, hair loosely tied, amusement glinting in her eyes. "Mr. CEO, are you burning breakfast again?" she teased, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He chuckled, pretending to sigh. "Art requires patience, Mrs. Hyun. That's not art. That's charcoal." He turned, grinning, and dabbed a bit of flour on her nose. "It still tastes better when you're here." She laughed, but her heart swelled. Even simple mornings like this, shared glances, playful words, quiet closeness, were sacred to her. At the Harmony House, they became something of a legend. Noble's cultural exhibitions began drawing attention from across Asia. She hosted African-Korean art collaborations, celebrating unity through color, rhythm, and emotion. Meanwhile, Juan expanded his business empire, but he did it differently now, with heart and humility. Every week, he'd sneak away from meetings just to surprise her at the gallery, often bringing her favorite jasmine tea. "You're supposed to be at work," she'd scold gently. "You are my work," he'd reply with a wink. "And my favorite distraction." They were partners in every sense, in dreams, art, and love. Evenings were their sanctuary. Sometimes, they'd sit on the balcony overlooking the Han River, watching the city lights shimmer below. The world might have known him as a billionaire CEO, but to Noble, he was simply her Juan, the man who once held her hand in the rain and never let go. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" she asked one night, her head resting on his shoulder. "Every day," he said softly, "and every time, I thank fate for breaking my heart once, so you could be the one to mend it." She turned to look at him, eyes glistening. "You've healed more than my heart, Juan. You healed my faith in love." He smiled, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "Then let's spend forever keeping it whole." And under the soul night sky, they kissed. Not with the passion of new lovers, but with the calm devotion of two souls who had already seen forever and chosen it again. Months later, one Sunday morning, Juan came home to find Noble painting on their balcony. The sunlight fell across her face, and in that moment, he stopped, overwhelmed by how love had quietly filled every part of his life. He walked up behind her, sliding his hands around her waist. "What are you painting?" "Our life," she whispered. "The colors we've become." He smiled, kissing her neck softly. "Then promise me one thing. Never stop painting us." "Only if you promise never to stop loving me," she said playfully. He turned her gently, looking into her eyes. "That's one promise I'll keep for a lifetime and beyond." And so, life and soul moved on. Not with grand events or flashing lights, but with quiet joy, laughter in small places, and the kind of love that only grew deeper with time. Every sunrise found them in each other's arms. Every sunset found them grateful. And somewhere high above the Han River, two hearts kept beating in harmony. The melody of Noble and Juan, whose love had become Soul's most beautiful secret. Noble stood by the window of their bedroom, her hands resting gently on her growing belly. The morning light kissed her skin, and the soft hum of music from the living room filled the air. Juan walked in, holding a tray, breakfast for two, though one was still months away. "Your favorite," he said, setting it down, "fruit, toast, and honeyed tea. And something sweet, because my love deserves it." She smiled, touched me. "You're spoiling me." "No," he whispered, resting his hand over hers. "I'm thanking you for giving me another heartbeat to love." Life changed beautifully after that. Juan became impossibly gentle, always by her side, from morning sickness to midnight cravings. When she couldn't sleep, he'd sit up with her, rubbing her back softly or reading her favorite books in that deep, calming voice of his. Sometimes he'd talk to her belly, his tone playful. "Hey, little one, it's your dad. I can't wait to meet you. But take your time. Your mom and I are still enjoying our honeymoon." Noble would laugh softly, her eyes glistening. "You'll be the sweetest father." "Only because I learned from loving you," he'd reply, kissing her forehead. When the Harmony House reopened after renovations, the news of her pregnancy spread quickly. Their love had already inspired many, but now it was something sacred: art, partnership, and family intertwined. They hosted a special exhibit called Beginnings. The theme was life, creation, and hope. On one wall hung Juan's latest painting, a portrait of Noble surrounded by blooming flowers, her hands resting on her belly. The title read, "Our Tomorrow." Guests were moved to tears, but Juan only watched her. The woman who had once entered his world by accident and now was his world entirely. One quiet evening, rain began to fall again, just like the first night they'd ever danced together. They sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching droplets race down the glass. Juan's hand rested protectively over her belly as he whispered, "Do you think our child will love the rain like we do?" "I think they'll love everything that reminds them of us," Noble said softly. "Then I hope they have your eyes," he smiled. "They hold whole stories. And your heart," she whispered. "It knows how to love endlessly." He kissed her slowly, the same soft, sure kiss that had followed them from heartbreak to healing, from lovers to partners, from dreamers to parents to be. Months later, one golden morning, their baby arrived, a tiny, perfect miracle with Noble's deep eyes and Juan's quiet smile. Juan wept the moment he held the child. "Welcome home," he whispered, voice trembling. "You're the best art I've ever helped create." Noble reached for him, their hands meeting over the baby's tiny heartbeat. "Our masterpiece," she said softly. From then on, their soul home echoed with gentle laughter, soft lullabies, and the endless rhythm of love multiplied. And every night, before sleep, Juan would whisper the same words to both his loves, his wife and their child. "You are my peace, my promise, my forever." And Noble, smiling in the dim light, would reply, "And you are my heart." Years passed softly, like pages turning in a love story written by time itself. Seoul changed, new towers rose, lights grew brighter. But in one quiet home overlooking the Han River, love remained timeless. The Hyun household was always full of laughter. Their child, little Hannah, grew up surrounded by art, warmth, and the kind of love that teaches without words. Every wall held a story, a painting, a sketch, a memory of the life Noble and Juan had built together. Every morning, Juan still made breakfast, sometimes messy, sometimes perfect, and Noble would still tease him with that same smile that had first captured his soul. Every evening, they still watched the sunset together, their fingers intertwined, their hearts beating to the same silent rhythm. And when Hannah ran into their arms, giggling, they would look at each other and see everything they had ever dreamed of. Not in wealth or fame, but in belonging. One autumn night, after tucking their daughter into bed, Noble and Juan stood on their balcony as golden leaves danced in the breeze. "Do you remember the girl you met years ago?" she asked softly, resting her head against his chest. "The one who made me forget how to breathe?" He smiled. "I never stopped seeing her." She laughed gently. "And I never stopped loving the man who turned my pain into peace." He pulled her closer, their foreheads touching. "We didn't just find love," he whispered. "We became it." And as the night folded around them, the city humming quietly below, the stars spilling their blessings above, they kissed, slow and tender, the way they always had. It wasn't the passion of new love anymore. It was something deeper, a calm, eternal devotion that had survived distance, heartbreak, and time itself. The Harmony House stood as their legacy, filled with art, music, and stories that celebrated unity and emotion. Visitors often said they could feel something in its walls, as if love itself had painted every corner. But those who knew Noble and Juan understood why. Because that house wasn't just art. It was them. Years later, when people spoke of the Hyuns, they didn't talk about wealth or power. They spoke of a love that defied all odds. A love that began with heartbreak, grew in forgiveness, and bloomed into a lifetime of peace. A love that became art, family, and forever. And as Noble once said on their anniversary, standing hand in hand before a painting of their first dance in the rain, "We didn't find a perfect love, we built a real one. And that, my Juan, will always be our masterpiece." Under Soul's soft lights, they shared one last kiss. Gentle, knowing, eternal, and the world, for a moment, felt complete. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.